The US Army is easier than ever to join. Like, a new recruit doesn't even have to physically be able to get into basic training, doesn't need to be smart enough to get into basic training. That's fine. The US Army will still take you and put you in a preparatory course. Now, in this video, I want to break down, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because it almost seems like the US Army is doing whatever it takes to get anyone to join the US Army in order to fill up their numbers. So let's break this all down in the video, and I'm going to try and be as fair as possible. My name is T-SPLY. Let's get to the video. Now, before we start this video, I don't want to be the guy who compares today's current generation and today's army to the past generations, because in no way, shape, or form does it make sense for me to compare an era who has cell phones and access to all the information in the world to soldiers who fought during the Vietnam era. There's almost no comparison there. It doesn't make sense. We have new technologies, we have new social changes, so we're not going to do that. I want to try and stay as current as possible. There might be some comparisons out there, but I'm going to try and make it relevant to today's generation. Now, one of the biggest changes for sure when you get into basic training is you have a little more access to the outside world. You get your cell phones a lot more often. You get to go on a pass a little more often. That's when you get to leave basic training and essentially go get a cheeseburger. And a lot of the older generation, even my generation back in 2013, they say, well, this is not fair. This is why the new soldiers stink. They're not as strong. They're soft. But I don't necessarily see this as a bad thing. I never understood why it was such an issue, especially if you had a family or you had kids. Why is it an issue to check up on them? I actually see things getting a little more worse. I saw soldiers get a lot more frustrated when they had to wait on an answer through a letter that would take a few weeks, you know, in case something bad happened or there was something important they need to find out. So I don't necessarily see this as a bad thing. However, when you do get cell phones and you do get more access to the outside world, it definitely does cause or open up the door for bad things to happen within basic training. Like, soldiers might act out, they might start posting dumb things. So I do see good and bad in both of the cell phone usage. Hey everyone, real quick, I'm not sponsored by anyone but you. Make sure you go purchase yourself a Tactical Scooter Battalion patch. Whenever you buy one of these patches, you support the channel, and I put the money right back into designing more funny patches for all of you. So go check out the Tactical Scooter Battalion patch. It means a lot. These things are affordable, they're high quality, they're funny. You're gonna love yours. Go purchase it. Link in the bio, link in the comments. Something else to consider in this generation of the US Army and basic training, we sort of went away from the whole shark attack approach, where we're just going to totally destroy this kid and he's going to be so afraid of the drill sergeant that he's not going to ask questions, he's not going to report when something bad happens because he doesn't want to get in trouble. And if you don't know what shark attack is, here's what a shark attack is.
Yes, drill sergeant, double back, over your head, come find it, find it, find it, hurry up, go find your head. How about you good man? I'm looking for it. And you just hit your freaking phone. That's what freaking phone is.
Now, I'm going to be honest with you. When I went through the shark attack in 2013, I actually loved it. I felt like I was a part of the club. I was thinking, you know, everyone before me went through this, so, you know, it's just something I have to get through. This is going to be the first test of basic training. Now, the actual design of what Shark Attack was all about was that it's going to break you down so bad. Not only you, it's going to break down everyone, and then everyone's going to come together at the end of basic training, and you're all going to laugh and remember, hey, remember when I got yelled at during Shark Attack? Now we're all tough and stronger because if we can get through Shark Attack, we can get through anything. Now look, the US Army is a direct reflection of its people and its culture, the United States. And one thing is for sure, within the United States, we have a very independent culture, and we have a generation that asks questions. They want to know things. And as we all know, anyone who's gone through basic training before this generation, asking a question or wanting to know an answer, that's not necessarily your role as a new cadet or a new soldier. And so with this new army and the new thing they're trying to implement is allowing for questions to be asked and allowing for the soldier to, you know, have a little more access to information. Thus, again, why we have cell phones and things like that. Again, I don't necessarily see this too much as a bad thing, but I do see where there is room for issues of being a little too individual within basic training when you are supposed to be one team, one fight. Now, if we're going to be honest, some drill sergeants love this, some drill sergeants hate this. I'm friends with a lot of drill sergeants, actually. And the biggest complaint always is, the drill sergeant is afraid to dig too much into the recruit because they don't want to get yelled at and say, whoa, you were a little too tough. Whereas new drill sergeants say, you know what? I like being that leader who is not necessarily friends with the new recruits, but we are close enough to where they gain my trust through just being respectful and just being nice. I'm not just going to randomly insult you because you're wearing glasses and I'm calling you Four Eyes, which, again, I'm not going to say that happened or didn't happen, but it wouldn't be necessarily frowned upon only 10 years ago. That's definitely not happening today. Maybe it is, maybe it's not, but you get what I mean. Now, this preparatory course is not necessarily a new thing. It's actually been around for a while now, and I talked about it before. And the basics of it is, if you are not strong enough to get into basic training and you cannot pass your test scores to get into the U.S. Army, you can go to this preparatory course, and then from there, they will get you stronger and they will get you smarter, and then you go into basic training, and then from basic training, you go to the U.S. Army. It's just a few extra steps before getting into basic training. And at the time, I actually was okay with that because I thought, hey, if I'm going to get paid extra and my life is going to be a little more easy, why not just go to the prep course, work out, get stronger, and then go to basic training where I will already be in shape and I don't have to worry about working out or passing my physical tests. So let's go ahead and break down the pros and the cons of all of this, because according to the U.S. Army, this is actually a good thing. First things first, a wider range of hopeful soldiers can now enlist into the U.S. Army. And that was the whole point of the prep course, and trying to put a lot of hype behind it that, hey, look, for all the people out there who never thought they were good enough to join the U.S. Army, or you were turned away because you're not strong, you can now join this prep course. And the U.S. Army was definitely hoping that, maybe they're not unmotivated, but they're not necessarily motivated enough in their life to get strong enough or to study on their own time to join. Now you can join the U.S. Army. Come on, everybody join. The argument is, and I'm just trying to be as honest as possible, if these new recruits were not that motivated in the life before the Army, who's to say that they're even going to be able to get through the U.S. Army? It's one thing to go through the preparatory course, which is not basic training, and then when you go to basic training, you're like, oh, whoa, this is a little too tough. I didn't think I was ready for it. So that is some of the issues, is that the U.S. Army was already banking on people being motivated enough to actually go to the recruitment office, being able to pass your basic tests. Because look, if you can pass your basic physical test and your basic qualifications test, like your actual test scores, you should be okay to get through basic training, because then from basic training, you should get into the U.S. Army and be okay. Now, this number right here, 6,100 recruits, that's how many recruits actually passed the preparatory course to get into basic training. Now, keep in mind, this doesn't necessarily mean you're in the U.S. Army or you're going to pass basic training, but it got you to that next step where you were not even able to get to that step. So I actually do see that as a really good thing. But again, keep in mind, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to pass basic training. It got you to basic training. But look, as I had mentioned before, where this new basic training model, it's a little easier on the soldier's mind, where you get your cell phone, you have a little more access to information, you know that your family back home is okay. That was definitely one of the hardest things I can remember being a soldier in basic training, was like, I was just wondering what's going on with the outside world. And a lot of soldiers cracked because of that. They were getting mad, they were getting frustrated. And with these new recruits, they really don't have that much to worry about. It's almost like you're traveling away for a job. You can call every weekend, you can text every weekend and be like, hey, everything's okay, I'm doing well, you doing good? Great. And I do think that 6,100 recruits going on to basic training, that's a really good number. That's about a brigade of soldiers and some, which is a lot. Now, here's where some of the bad comes with this whole preparatory course. You already have had to fail or not meet the standard to get into basic training, then you get into the prep course. Now imagine failing the prep course standards and then being able to get into the prep course. And what I mean by that is, as you see here, the Army is allowing a pilot cohort of 100 soldiers with AFQT scores between 16 and 20. Which means it's 5 points lower than the current course eligibility standards, which means you failed your standards 2 times. You failed to get into basic training, you failed the preparatory course, and now you're in an even easier course to get into the U.S. Army. And I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. Now, the thing that's a little sketchy to me is that the U.S. Army is willing to do this for just 100 soldiers. And that's where I sort of use the phrasing, are you kind of being a sellout, and are you willing to lower the standards so much just to meet that number, just to look good for everyone? Because look, we have to consider, I'm not saying these new recruits are bad people, but they have to be honest with themselves as well. You failed the standard twice. And again, I'm not trying to be that guy, But those are low scores. And it's like, are we going to be paying for these kids to fail twice and now your tax dollars are paying for them to get into these prep courses? I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. But again, the U.S. Army is easier than ever to join. If you are that kid who might come from a bad background, you're unaware of how to eat healthy, you're maybe just not passing your test scores because it's not that you're not smart, maybe you just don't know what you don't know. Join the Army. Do it now because I don't think this is going to last forever. There's 100 slots available. Who knows if it's even still there? But again, I do think the preparatory course is a good thing. I don't think this new generation of soldiers are as soft and as not as intelligent as we think. I just think that they get cell phones. They don't necessarily do the whole shark attack thing. It's a new culture. It's a new generation. And I think we need to be supportive of the new generation instead of hating on them. We just need to be honest with them. We need to give them information because that's the best we got to do. I'm not going to be joining the Army. These guys are. So look, that's my opinion on all of this. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think I'm totally off on all this? Do you think the U.S. Army is destroyed? Again, I want to make my stance clear. I am in favor of the preparatory course. I am not in favor if you failed the already easy to get into preparatory course. If you failed it, you got to get better. You got to take more time. You got to get self-motivated because then once you get into the preparatory course, I'm sure all of you will do just fine. So yeah, that's my opinion. My name is T-SPLY and we'll see you guys later.